Did you know you're one with God for eternity? Welcome, welcome to our community. You're not a stranger anymore. Now you're family. Welcome, welcome to our community. Did you know you're one with God for eternity? Welcome, welcome to our community. You're not a stranger anymore. Now you're family. You're not a stranger anymore. Now you're family.
Masks and microphones don't mix well. So good morning.
Good morning.
As most of you know, I'm Reverend Vicki Elder, and it's my joy and honor to welcome you to Unity of Monterey Bay, a beloved community co-created with love and intention that welcomes all races, ages, cultures, ethnic backgrounds, economic circumstances, nationalities, and religions, whatever your immigration status, sexual orientation, gender identity, or family configuration or abilities, whether you're here with us in person or joining us virtually. We know and we affirm that love knows no boundaries. We are one in spirit. As a purpose-driven church, Unity of Monterey Bay is an inclusive spiritual community committed to co-creating an environmentally sustainable, spiritually fulfilling, socially just, and compassionate human presence on this planet. We celebrate our oneness and honor the God of each of our understanding, affirming the innate good and divine essence within each and every individual. Would you please join me in our statement of faith? There is only one presence and one power in the universe, God the good, expressing as infinite God beyond us, intimate God beside us, inner God being us, divine love in action. And so as we allow this knowing to deepen within our souls, I read from a book of blessings on blessed be doors. Blessed be doors, big ones and blue or round and rainbow, or ones that look like you. Blessed be doors that open us onto a new path of thought, being, and acting if we walk through. Blessed be doors that attract no attention, but are there as a pointer to a different way. Blessed be doors that open when we least expect it, inviting us into a new place, suggesting we stay. And blessed are we when we do. And I invite you to affirm with me, thank you, God, for this most amazing day. Miracle follows miracle, and wonders never cease. And now we celebrate our children, the children in our community here that now go directly downstairs, the children in our larger community, and our families, and all the children in the world, especially holding the places in Turkey and Syria that are struggling so horrifically with that earthquake that happened there. So we just see them surrounded in love and light. And we see our children protected and resilient, creative and evolving, joyous and loved as we join in our blessing. We love you, we bless you, we appreciate you just the way you are.
This bright light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This bright light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This bright light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
So now let's all take a deep breath in and let it out with an audible sigh. As we center ourselves to embrace this blissful interconnection with Spirit and invite the chime to call us into this sacred space within. We ring the chime 4 times to call in the 4 directions and remind us of our interconnection with all of creation and with the sacred circle of life. As we feel it resonate through our very beings, we follow its call into this now present moment within. Continuing to focus on our breath, with each inhale, we open our hearts and minds. We envision our breath reaching every cell of our being, and with each exhale, we see all barriers and obstacles dissolving into this divine flow. Again, as we inhale, we expand the spaciousness within us. We move beyond the limitations and boundaries of our bodies, and as we exhale, we ground ourselves deep within Mother Earth and into our oneness with the universe. Finally, we breathe our awareness into the highest expression of love, light, joy, and peace we can imagine, as we experience a transforming wave of gratitude, and with a fullness of heart we say yes to it all, embracing, claiming, and knowing the divine Christ Spirit expressing in, through, and as us. And with a final exhale, we say thank you, God. Now fully centered and transformed by the power of Spirit, we enter into our lesson and meditation time with today's daily word.
We read from today's daily word, shared with permission of Unity, publisher of Daily Word. They can also be found at dailyword.com. And the word is compassion. I invite you to allow my words to be your words. Acts of loving compassion builds strength. Whether in my community or across the world, many people face hardships. As a member of the human family, I am inspired to undertake compassionate action and help however I can. Sometimes just a prayerful thought or simple blessings can make a powerful difference in someone's life. Other times, I may be able to take more direct action. I may listen to someone deeply as they share concern of their heart. Or I may volunteer to drive them somewhere or complete errands for them. Regardless of my compassionate action takes, I am motivated to be in sacred service, to bring the love and care of God into manifest form through my decisive action. And from Scripture, when he went to shore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion for them and cured the sick. From Matthew chapter 14, verse 14.
I am that I am has brought me to this now moment. Here I
In witness to the many paths to the sacred, we read from 3 sacred traditions on this morning's topic: spiritual community from Islam. And when a company meets together in one of the houses of God to pore over the book of God and to study together among themselves, the Shekinah comes down to them, and mercy overshadows them. The angels surrounds them, and God remembers them among them that are his. From Buddhism, a Sangha is a community of friends practicing the Dharma together in order to bring about and maintain awareness. The essence of a Sangha is awareness. Understanding acceptance, harmony, and love. When you do not see these things, when you do not see these in a community, it is not a true Sangha. And you should have courage to say so. But when you find these elements are present in a community, you know that you have the happiness and fortune of being in a real Sangha. From Christianity, and they devoted themselves to the apostles, teaching, and the fellowship. To the breaking of bread and the prayers. And awe came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. And all who believed were together and had all things in common. And they were selling their possessions and belongings and distributing the proceeds to all, as any had need. And day by day, attending the temple together and breaking bread in their homes, they received their food with glad and generous hearts. Praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to their number day by day those who were being saved.
Home is where the heart is, where peace and love abide. A place for all seasons that beckons us inside. This fellowship of believers is the home and family, a source of light that shines so bright just for you and me. Welcome home to this family, created love and choice. It doesn't matter where you've been, in your coming we rejoice. We behold the Christ in you, with arms stretched open.
All right, that was a little anemic. Let's try that again. And how about for Larry? I gave him a real doozy this morning. Poor Larry. I gave him some really long scriptures there. And I was thinking, watching him do the, I'm not trying to embarrass you, but you just shine this light. I was like, we got to film him doing the movements and like post it as like Prozac for everyone on Facebook or something, because his smile and his enthusiasm, he's going to heaven. It's awesome, Larry. We love your enthusiasm and joy. Y'all ready? Get comfortable, settle in. So, it's no secret that church attendance in the United States is declining. And we know now that this is happening. For a while, it looked like it was happening in all denominations except for the mega churches and the evangelical churches. Now it's happening to them too. A study published by the Pew Research Center in December 2021 showed that Americans who self-identify as Christians make up only 63% of the U.S. population. Now, that makes sense when you know that that is down from 75% a decade ago. And Pew Research estimates that if these current trends continue, and there's no reason for us to believe that they won't, Christians will no longer be a majority in this country. We will be a minority of Americans by 2070. There seems to be consensus that young adults are leading the mass exodus from Christianity, being that the largest percentage of those leaving are about 30 and under. Are those millennials? No, those would be Gen Z, right? Is that what they're called, Gen Z? Millennials are like 30 and over maybe, right? Okay, so it's the Gen Zers. And we know this to be true here in this church because we have been trying for years to come up with ways to attract younger people. So it's not like we are failing. This is something that is happening all across the board. An article that I read on a website called missioalliance.org gives a rather gloomy description of this trend. It said, all across America, churches are closing. According to Tom Rayner of Lifeway Research, between 6,000 and 10,000 churches in the U.S. are dying each year. That means around 100 to 200 churches will close this week. That's kind of striking. And it says the pace will accelerate unless our congregations make some dramatic changes. Now, this particular article went on to give what I think is some pretty good advice. Rather than lamenting this fact or wasting our time and energy trying to figure out why this is happening, forward-thinking leaders will try to learn from the models of churches that are currently thriving. And that's a little bit of what we're going to do this morning, looking at some of the trends that are happening in churches and what's working. Now, as a relatively younger person, why are you guys laughing? I've been the baby in this church for over 25 years. I'm in my 4th year of ministry, if you can believe that, since ordination. So for me, this is obviously quite concerning because I am at the beginning of my ministry career, essentially, and I'm hoping to work in the church for another 20 years or so. So obviously, I have a very personal stake in looking at these trends and how this is going to pan out. What's going to happen to the church with a capital C, meaning all churches, as well as our own UMB church. But what about all of you? Is it concerning to you also? Okay, now please don't take this the wrong way. But many of you are 15, 20, 25 years older than me. We're different generations, right? And many of you have already been coming to this church for many, many years. Some more than 20 years. Many of you have already put literally decades of your life, your money, and your volunteer time, your heart and soul really, into this church. And I do not doubt for 1 second that you love and cherish our church. But still, you may think, well, we've had a good run, right? You know what I mean? Why worry about the church of the future? Or why should I be concerned that church attendance is decreasing? Why should I be concerned if the church is still around in the future? You also might feel like, I can sometimes go in and out of this, I'm sure Vicki too, a little bit of resignation to the situation, like it's inevitable. We know that church participation is on the decline. We know that the younger generations have been proven to be pretty darn uninterested in church. Not that they are not spiritual. They are spiritual. They just don't identify as religious. They didn't grow up going to church, so they are what they call the unchurched generation. Why, you might say to yourself, why fight this? Why fight an uphill battle? And I think these are legitimate questions. I think that it's worthwhile for us to think about these questions as a church as we move forward. I think that we ought to think about what are our hopes and dreams for the future of this church. What legacy would we like to leave to the younger generations? Now, we may not have a lot of children in our church, but we do have 2 almost 11-year-olds who have been coming here since they were wee things, like 3 or 4. They are quite dedicated to this church. They're here almost every week. Their mother says that they love it. And we have Jasona, she's not here today, we have Jasona's kids who come frequently, Linda and Howard's grandkids. So there are some kids in our church who are growing up with these teachings, and we know it's impacting their lives because their parents tell us. So what kind of a church do we want to leave to them? So I'm going to be asking you to think about some of these things today during this lesson, and you received a handout. Where'd it go? You received a blue handout. Yeah. If you didn't, did anybody not get one? Okay. So this is for you to take your time with. You can take it home and bring it back. It doesn't have to be done today. But if you get some ideas during the lesson or, the rest of church or even into the calling the circle meeting, you can jot them down. I used the term emerging church in my talk title because this has become a popular term that's used in ministry circles and in church leadership discussions, and it's often used to describe the future of the church. What is emerging in ministry? What is the church that is emerging? Sometimes called emergent ministry. The term emerging church also refers to the church's attempt to sort of get aligned with the current era, which I'm not a student of these things, but apparently the era we are in is called the postmodern era. Okay, and so emerging church is about bringing the church into postmodernism. Now, what is postmodernism? I don't know a lot about it, but I know some things that are some real differences from eras bygone. Eras of yore, if you will. In postmodernism, experience is valued over reason. Subjectivity is valued over objectivity. Spirituality over religion. This tracks, right? And feelings over truth. Of course, conservative church leaders claim that these trends are destroying the church, right? And they are right if they're talking about destroying the old way of doing church. These trends are destroying the old ways of doing church, which typically involved rigid adherence to doctrine and objective belief, right, rather than subjective spiritual experience. These old ways are indeed falling by the wayside. The whole culture is changing, as cultures are wont to do, and the church must change along with it. One of the ways that church is changing is from a more hierarchical, centralized, sort of top-down structure to a more decentralized, collaborative, egalitarian model. What does that mean? That the minister has little less authority now, is not seen as sort of the end-all, be-all, standing up in the pulpit imparting our spiritual wisdom. Rather, the minister in this new model functions more as a guide or as a facilitator, assisting the church participants in creating, managing, and maintaining the church. So this trend could be described sort of as the difference between, I don't know if other people call it this, but I call it a transmission model of church, of ministry, and I'm going to explain that in a second, and a collaborative model of ministry. So the transmission model would be, again, where people come to the church to hear the minister speak and impart their spiritual wisdom, right? You come here to hear us expound, and I'm happy to do that for you. No. In this role, the participants you all have a very passive role, right? So you're just receiving what we are transmitting, just listening to the minister and receiving. Now, a collaborative model would be much more egalitarian, where everyone comes together to create this church experience together. So rather than coming to church to get something, we come to church to be part of creating something. And in this model, again, the minister functions as a leader, but more in a role of facilitator rather than in an authoritarian role. Darn it. Those days are over. As if we really wanted that role, right? Now, if you think about it, the transmission model is a sort of consumerist model of ministry. Church attendees come to receive or consume something. Churches are expected to entertain people, to put on a show, to have good PowerPoints and good music and pyrotechnics. Some churches have that. You know, the big screens. And so we're supposed to entertain people. And people talk about coming to church to be spiritually fed. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but think about a little bit what that means. I go to church to be spiritually fed. Again, that's a transmission model. You're coming to church to get something from those of us who are putting on the show, right? On the other hand, a collaborative or participatory model, in that model, church attendees take responsibility for their own spiritual experience. They feel empowered to be part of creating a sacred experience, not only for themselves, but for others. So in that sense, we come to feed one another rather than to be fed. So I'm basically talking about the difference between coming to church to get something and coming to church to be part of something. Now, this is a big shift because people have been going to church to get something for a very long time. So when ministers stop providing that thing in that way, people start getting uncomfortable, right? Where do you think that our own church would fall on that sort of spectrum, if you think about it for a minute? Well, I'm one of the people who's old enough to remember when Rory and Vicki got here almost 25 years ago, or it is 25. 25 this year? In July will be 25 years ago. When they came here, I remember one of the things that they talked about with us when we had these sort of preliminary meetings is that they were clear that they wanted to create a different type of church. They wanted it to be more collaborative. And this was 25 years ago, so you could say they were ahead of their time. They wanted it to be a more collaborative, participatory church where members were deeply involved in creating the church together. Right? And that's their leadership style, too. Neither Vicki nor Rory were big authoritarians, right? So, of course, they would still be ministers, but they would function in a less authoritarian and a more inclusive way, with church members and attendees playing a much bigger role in both creating and sustaining the church. I think it's safe to say that we have been very successful in creating this type of church. And you can see that by our almost 80% participation rate, right? So almost 80% of the church participate actively in some way in volunteering and helping to manage, create, sustain the church. Now, this is remarkable when you look at the fact that most churches have 20% of the people that are actively involved in ministry. So we have created a very highly participatory, collaborative church. Another way that this emerging church is changing is in its teachings and their requirements for belief. As I mentioned at the beginning, the postmodern era values experience more than belief and feelings more than truth. In other words, it values one's subjective experience of the sacred versus a doctrinal, prescribed belief system. Now, if you grew up in church, you know what I'm talking about, right? So for many churches that are engaging in this emerging church movement, it has meant moving away from that rigid doctrine and adherence to belief and moving toward a more inclusive spirituality. Once again, conservative church leaders are not terribly happy about this trend, right? It was interesting when I was looking up information about this, it's always the, what do you call them? The people who are, the church is, they're destroying the church, whatever. Now for us in Unity's always been a movement with very little dogma, right? Yes, we have certain teachings. And in the past few decades, we've sort of developed and started really using the 5 principles, which is sort of a shorthand way for us to remember what our main teachings are, because sometimes people ask us and we can't remember. So that's been helpful. But there's always been a lot of room for individual understanding and experience and interpretation, and an emphasis on people's own individual experience of the divine. That's always been a part of Unity. In fact, it's probably what drew you, I know it's what drew me, to this Unity movement. So in this sense, for us in Unity, emerging church is not so much about getting away from the doctrine, because we didn't have it to begin with. It's more about how we do church. Okay? Now in seminary, we talked a lot about some interesting new ideas and styles that some churches are trying out. Things like rearranging the furniture, getting rid of pews. It's one idea. So that you can put chairs in a circle, and so that the minister is sort of in the circle and not the way we're set up where you're all looking at me, and I'm sort of the focus of attention. So breaking that down into a setup that fosters a different feeling, right? And then there's some other things that people have been trying out, like rather than, again, a show type of ministry where we're up here providing, a blow-by-blow kind of program for you, churches are trying out things like getting into groups and having discussions, or even moving around the church. Some churches are trying out stations. You come in and there's a prayer station over here and there's an art station over here, and, where you're doing different things. So ministry starts to look a little bit different. When it comes to new ways of doing church, really the sky is the limit. Once we sort of step out of that traditional structure that we have kept to for so long, we become free to explore all different types of worship and spiritual exploration and exploring what we call church. Now, even taking it farther than that, there are some really innovative and interesting ways of doing church that are emerging across the country. They're calling these fresh expressions of church. And I just want to share a few of them with you. Probably the most popular one that you may have even heard of is called dinner church. Sometimes dinner church, I think, is actually like a registered name. It can also be called table fellowship, and some of them even call it Jesus tables. Now, this is not a new concept. This is a return to the earliest beginnings of the Christian church, where the early Christians, who probably weren't even calling themselves Christians then, they gathered to share a meal. That's what they did. That was their church. We know that Jesus regularly gathered with his followers and disciples to dine. In fact, we know that it was his extreme inclusion of people at his table that would not have normally been at such a table that was so radical about his teaching, so groundbreaking, to break bread with people who were considered unclean at that time, impure. And this is also, as we know, one of the things that led to him being killed. Now, in the decades following Jesus' death, followers of the Way, as they called it, continued this model of gathering together to share a sacred meal. That's what one of the very long Bible verses we had was talking about from Acts, from the book of Acts, where it talks about the beginning of the early church and how the people continued to gather. So we remember that Jesus asked people to, when they gathered together, when they broke bread and poured wine, to remember him. This is what eventually evolved into what we call communion today. But I think it's possible that the early Christians, when they gathered and they broke bread and they poured wine, that what they were really doing was remembering what it had felt like when Jesus was with them. Remembering that feeling that he managed to create at those tables, that feeling of inclusion and of acceptance and of forgiveness, right? So that was what their table fellowship was about, was remembering that. How did that make us feel, and how can we continue to recreate that feeling for others? So many churches across the nation are following this model, and they are holding evening church with a meal being served. So there's a website for dinner church, and on the website, one of the participants described it like this: "We feel like we've stumbled into a movement of the Spirit in the church, a renewal of focus and joy, a way of being the church that recaptures the heart of what Jesus did around tables and what the earliest Christians experienced together." Another example is a church called Somewhere Else, also known as the Bread Church. According to their website, the Bread Church is an inclusive community that meets around the making and sharing of bread. They offer a warm welcome, hospitality, and friendship to those of all faiths and those of no faith. They meet twice a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10:30 to 2 to make bread by hand. So these meetings involve the full process of making bread, as well as then sharing a meal and eating the bread. And of course, during the making of bread, they share in conversations. And they also have a time for reflection and prayer. And then they share this meal together. I've heard of some churches that are actually selling the bread that they make to fund the ministry. And selling lots of other things too, but I just was thinking about bread, making the bread and then not just eating the bread, but making extra bread and selling it. So that takes me to another example of what a lot of churches are doing, which is called the church business hybrid, where the church takes on a business venture, such as bread making or running a cafe, that they combine in some way with holding church services. And so the business funds the ministry. And often, usually, the congregants are involved in some way in the running of the business. So coffee house church hybrids are one of the most common. In Topeka, Kansas, there's one called Cafe Quetzal, which is a coffee shop, community center, and church hybrid all wrapped into one. And their website explains that if you come in during a weekday, it will look like a traditional coffee shop. Then they host community events and such throughout the week. And then they have a church service on Sunday mornings. I don't know if any of you read about this a few years ago, but a local Disciples of Christ church in Santa Cruz sold their building for, I think, a whopping $3 million. And they bought a brewery. They did some other things too, but they bought a brewery. And this is a progressive Disciples of Christ are very progressive. They're an inclusive community. They wanted to be able to invite everyone to be part of their church. But they are attracting people who have left the church because of bigotry and hate-filled theology. They are calling themselves Greater Purpose Community Church. So you can go to their church and you can have a couple of beers and hear a sermon at the same time. And the pastor was actually quoted as saying that if you have 2 beers, his sermon is better. Sounds like fun, right? Now, there are also many ways of doing church that don't require selling the building or dismantling Sunday church as we know it. My dear friend from seminary, Rev Ev, he's an amazing visual artist as well as a minister of Unity of Oak Park near Chicago. He's turned his church into an art gallery. So they've invited local artists to display their work throughout the church. Now, this serves the purpose of supporting local artists while also bringing new people into the church to check out the art. Now, he's so busy running this church that I couldn't get a hold of him to find out details. I don't know whether they take a percentage of the art that is sold. I haven't figured all that out yet. They also have a large campus. They are renting out different parts of their church grounds to various businesses and organizations. That brings in extra revenue for the church and creating their programs, right? But they're also creating partnerships with the community. Lots and lots of partnerships and relationships. They even have an art activity room that you can rent out for various uses. They're even renting out parking spaces in their parking lot and office space in their building. All of these things obviously supplement their Sunday offerings and fund all of their programs. Okay. Now, I am not saying that we should disband UMB and start making bread or running a brewery. And I certainly don't mean to imply in any way that we are in any kind of trouble or that we're in any kind of financial crisis, because thank you, God, we are not. Right? And as you will see during our financial reports in the Calling of the Circle meeting, we are actually in really good shape when a lot of churches around us are not. Now, this is in large part, I think we can pat ourselves on the back. We've worked really hard on prosperity consciousness for many, many years. And then also, I hope it's okay to say, but God bless Jennifer Jones, right? Because she left us some money that we've received, and somebody else that none of us even knew, but somebody knew them. James knew. So we've had a few bequeaths that have not only helped us stay in the black, but helped us, fund the carpet, and we're going to be making some renovations. You're going to hear all about this later. Yeah, the pew cushions. So we're actually doing really well, and we're very fortunate. I'm giving you these examples because I just want you to know what's going on in other churches and plant a seed that, who knows, might take years or even decades to germinate. But I want all of us to begin to think a little bit about church outside the box. Who knows? Maybe someone's idea or imagination will maybe someone will come up with something that we will want to pursue. Now, if this feels a little bit scary, it's scarier even for the ministers, right? Every time we, see an article come across our feed that church is dying, we're like, what? It'd be like hearing that the company you work for was dying, right? But I heard someone at a Unity conference say something that really helped me. She said that, yes, a new way of doing church is emerging. Things are changing and shifting, and we don't know yet what that's going to look like. But she said, that's okay. We don't have to know what it's going to look like yet. It's going to become clear as time goes on. So, as we say often in 12-step programs, more will be revealed. We don't have to figure it all out right now. But we do have to be awake and alert to what's happening. And we do want to engage our imagination and keep those ideas flowing so that when somebody comes up with a great idea, we're receptive to it. So that's my purpose in sharing these things. We don't have to figure it all now. We just have to open our minds to new possibilities and pay attention and watch what unfolds. And practice our prosperity consciousness, practice trusting divine order, right? Now, in the meantime, while that's happening, while the church of the future is unfolding, it might be helpful for us to spend some time considering what our true purpose is for existing as a church. Why do we exist? What is our church's mission? Now, many more traditional Christian churches say that their main purpose is to bring more people to Christ, right? And therefore to salvation. But converting has never really been Unity's jam. And we don't subscribe to the idea of people being saved by becoming Christians. So what then is our mission as a church? What is our true purpose? Now, we do have a mission statement. We read it at the beginning of every service. And, Vicki and I were sort of talking a little bit, texting a little bit, that we may want to revisit that, to freshen it up. It may need some updating. So I'm seeking all of your input and just wanting you all to start really thinking, for yourself. What do you think the mission of our church is? Why do we exist? You can jot down these things on your handout whenever you have a chance. And when you're doing this, you may want to think back to when you first came to this church. What were you looking for? What compelled you to go and look for a church? And then what made you decide to stay here? And what do you continue to find here that keeps you coming back? You may want to think about what makes Unity in particular, and in particular our incarnation of Unity, UMB, what makes it a good fit for you? How do the teachings resonate with you? And how have they transformed your life? I'm sure you all have amazing stories about how these teachings have transformed your life and how you use them in a practical way on a daily basis, right? So considering these things may help you discern what you feel our true purpose is. And this is going to help us guide us into the future. As the culture shifts and younger generations are, not interested in organized religion, and these trends in ministry are changing and evolving, we need to ask ourselves, who and what do we want to become? How can we meet the needs of a changing culture in a way that feels authentic to us and that inspires us to grow and expand? And then finally, I'm asking you on the handout, I think it would be worthwhile for us to consider. I mean, seriously, really, why do we want this church to be here in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years? Why do we want to exist? Now, the answers to these questions are not nearly as important as staying in the question, right? As we watch what unfolds. So I read an article where they asked a very poignant question. Why should anyone besides Christians care whether the church survives? And there's a lot of angry people leaving the Christian church, because of the obvious things that we're not going to get into today. But, so there's a lot of resentment, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of healing that needs to be done. Why should anyone care if the church dies? Well, I think this is an important question because it asks us to consider what role the church plays in our postmodern 21st century society. What role does the church play? With more and more people leaving organized religion and rejecting traditional Christian doctrine, people identifying as spiritual but not religious, what purpose does a church serve? Or does it even serve a purpose anymore? Is the whole idea of church just outdated? Now again, probably because I'm a minister at the beginning of my career, I think that church still has a really important role to play in our society, even as what church looks like changes, even as that changes. Think to yourself some of the things that our own church does, things that we do in our community, our charitable efforts, our involvement with COPA, and think about what our church does for you, how it supports you in transforming your own life. I believe that churches play an important role because I believe that they fill in the gaps in our society that have been created by the dismantling of many of our social structures. Right? People used to get the support and connection that they needed from extended family that lived nearby, from their neighborhoods, from workplaces where they worked for 20, 30, 40 years. That's not what our culture looks like anymore. Right? And so churches are a way of stepping in and filling that gap, giving people a place to connect with others, right? People who have been left feeling really alone by the dismantling of these social structures. And so I believe that church is important because of what church does best, which is bringing people together. If you think about it, church offers us a place to form bonds and relationships outside of our family, outside of our workplace, like the song said, or is it the one we already sang, or the one we're going to sing? No, the one we sang, about family, right? This is the family of our choosing. That's what it said, the family that we choose, right? And it gives us a chance to form relationships that are based on shared values. We may not have the same values as our neighbors or as our coworkers. And a shared sense of the sacred. And church offers us opportunities to care for and support one another, rallying around those of us when we are in need, helping one another through times of hardship and during life's challenges and transitions. Also, we provide a safe place for us to grow and learn together, right? We're a very forgiving group. This is where we can try out new behaviors in a safe way, try out living out these teachings that we strive for, right? It's a place where we accept one another and forgive one another and do our best to love one another unconditionally. Essentially where we are trying to emulate the way that Jesus taught, where we are trying to bring forth that kingdom of God that Jesus said is right here at hand if we would just do what we need to do to bring it forth. That's what we practice doing here. We are trying to bring forth that kingdom of God. And we do this whenever we allow love and kindness and compassion to lead us. So this is what I think is the unique role of church in our postmodern society. It's what I think churches do well. It's what I think we do really well. And even as church evolves and changes in the future, it is what I hope we can continue to do for many, many years to come.
You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God.
So as we prepare to spend a few minutes in the quiet, just getting comfortable, allowing your body to relax, finding an awareness of your breath, and just settling in, allowing the body and mind to rest for just a few moments, letting your breathing become deeper, slower, slowing down. And I invite you to be aware of what feelings are present for you today as you heard this lesson about the future of church and the future of our own church. What's coming up for you? Is there excitement, anticipation? Is there fear, anxiety? Just letting whatever comes up be there for you. Letting it be just as it is. And as you take a deep breath in and let it out slowly, notice what it feels like to be sitting in this church service this morning. Your body gently resting in the pew. Your friends and church family all around you. The soft guitar, the trickling water. What I hope you feel on some level is a sense of safety. A sense that you are safe here. A sense of inclusion and acceptance. That you can be who you are here. A sense of belonging. That you belong here. A sense of being a part of something bigger than yourself. And I hope that those feelings bring you joy and bring you connection and love and peace. And so I invite you to just rest gently for a few moments, just feeling what it feels like to be sitting here on this Sunday morning in your church where you belong.
You are the face of God. I hold you in my arms. You are a part of me. You are the face of God. You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God.
So as we prepare to bring this time to a close, we allow our hearts to be filled with gratitude for each and every one of us that come together to create this experience of the divine and of the sacred. We give thanks. We are so grateful. Thank you, God.
Thank you, God.
And so it is. Amen.
Unity of Monterey Bay is a collective consciousness and commitment to all of us who give of our time, treasure, and talent in order to sustain this spiritual community that is dedicated to transforming lives. We know that prosperity is a state of mind that finds blessings in every situation, and abundance in joyous generosity. We transform all appearance of fear or lack into faith-filled peace of mind by shifting our attention to thoughts of gratitude for the abundance of God's good in our lives. And with our hearts and minds overflowing with gratitude, we breathe into this divine flow of God's good, trusting that we are enough, that we have enough, and that there always is enough to both have and share. And again, we are grateful to all of you for your online giving, your online generosity in supporting our spiritual community. For those of you here in person, the baskets are in the back by the door for you to drop your offerings as you leave this morning, or use your credit card in the sacred grounds. And now, from this place of faith-filled gratitude, I invite you to join me in mindful intention and join in our offertory blessing. I am an open channel for God's infinite good. Divine love flowing through me blesses and multiplies everything I give and everything I receive. I am both blessed and a blessing. Thank you, God.
Now we're going to have some fun.
We are unity, living one in spirit are we. We are unity. Get up everybody and sing. We are unity, living one in spirit are we. We are unity, and we love this community. Everyone can see we're together, standing side by side, and we flock just like birds of a feather, arms open wide. All of the people around us, they say, can they be that close? Just let me say for the record, we're giving love in a unity dose. We are unity, living one in spirit are we. We are unity. Get up everybody and sing. We are unity, living one in spirit are we. side by side, and we flock just like birds of a feather, silent, open wide. All of the people around us, they say, can they be that close? Just let me stay for the record. We're giving love and a unity dose. We are unity, living one in spirit are we. We are unity. Get up everybody and sing. We are unity, living one in spirit are we. We are unity, and we love this community. We are unity. Woo!
We have just too much fun here, don't we? Devin, you rock! Yay! Who knew that little bitty kid with the bowl haircut was going to grow up to bring us such beautiful music? We love it. All righty. Let's see. We want to thank Niall Rogers, Bernard Edwards, Carol Huntley, Karen Drucker, Jay Blackwelder, and Armand and Angelina for their inspiring music today, as well as our awesome music team, Denise and Robin and Devin and Sue and John and Marianne and moi. So, today is our annual membership meeting, our Calling of the Circle. Everyone is welcome to join us. It's going to be shortly after the service. Grab a coffee and a snack, and we will begin. So, as we bring our service to a close this morning, sorry. It's right here in front of me. That's why I saw it. These are about the women's retreat. You can grab this in the sacred grounds so you'll know what's going on.
And I have information about everybody, what you have deposited already, so I'll be sending that out to you individually by email.
Yeah, it's been a while. Some of us paid like 3 years ago, so she's going to let us know who's paid what and what's outstanding and that type of thing. We still have openings. Okay. We are so glad that you joined us this morning. We hope we've made you feel at home in our Unity of Monterey Bay community, and we want you to know that wherever you are on your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. Our prayer chaplain on duty today is Mr. Larry Sanks, is available to pray with you after the service, and we give thanks for Larry in all of the various hats that he wears. All right, let's form our closing circle for our prayer for protection and our peace song. We're in a library or something. Okay. There we go. So as we do each week, we form this circle of love and community, and we call, whether out loud or to yourself, into this circle all those in our hearts, in our lives, in our communities that are in need of prayer this morning, so that they might be encircled by that love of God, enfolded and embraced by the presence of God, and lifted up. And we can call to mind this morning Turkey and all of those affected by the disaster there, again, holding them in this circle of love, surrounding them, and lifting them up as we join in our prayer for protection. The light of God surrounds us. I am light. The love of God enfolds us. I am love. The power of God protects us. I am power. The presence of God watches over us. I am presence. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well.